Stone Age people were grunting cavemen with spears. True or false? Absolutely false. They were gathering around and forming real culture as far as we've discovered. In Turkey, scientists uncovered a 12,000-year-old mystery that's revising history. It's a sophisticated cosmic calendar made out of giant stone temples that may actually be a warning from the stars. We're talking about Göbekli Tepe. This prehistorical site predates even Stonehenge, our classical stone ring circle, by 6,000 years. And it upends why we think Stone Age civilizations emerged and thrived. Here's how this discovery could change our collective history. Around 10,850 BCE, a massive comet, or better yet, a bunch of comet fragments, smashed into Earth. The skies darkened, the temperature dropped, big animals vanished, and it kicked off a mini ice age that lasted over 1,200 years. What's now a place called Göbekli Tepe was home to a group of humans who survived this entire chaotic event. After it happened, they started paying close attention to the sky. As a way of trying to control time a little bit more, they tracked the movements of the sun, the moon, the planets, and comets. This in turn led them to build a huge lunisolar calendar, the first one in the world. Now, if you were to tour around this classic Stone Age monument, you'd see that not all the stone pillars are blank. Some of them have carvings, like this main one with a bunch of V's on it. Turns out there are 365 V's, which scientists believe represent the days of the solar year. One of them, a V hanging on a bird's neck, is thought to mark a solar eclipse. Other pillars have dangerous animals carved on them, like foxes, lions, scorpions, vultures, twisting and crawling up the sides. Unlike typical Stone Age carvings, these weren't of edible animals like deer or sheep. One of the theories is that these drawings were symbolic. Some archaeologists believe they reflect the fears and chaos this civilization had lived through, a kind of collective attempt to make sense of a terrifying and unpredictable world. Archaeologist Danielle Stordur has highlighted the images of vultures, saying they represent the people who passed away. In some ancient cultures, vultures were believed to carry the souls of the deceased into another realm. She's seen similar symbols in ancient sites nearby. To understand why this all makes sense, we need to dig deeper into the real purpose of this site. Göbekli Tepe was discovered in 1994 by German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, who realized that the hill in southeastern Turkey wasn't just another Neolithic mound. Underneath it, his team uncovered massive stone circles supported by pillars weighing up to 20 tons. Radiocarbon dating puts the site at around 12,000 years old, making it the oldest known ceremonial structure ever built. I mean, it predates the Egyptian pyramids by over 7,000 years. This discovery shocked the archaeological world. At the end of the Ice Age, humans were supposed to be nomadic, surviving off wild plants and animals, not building sacred complexes with symbolic art, and giving birth to what we now classify as civilization. We usually think civilization starts with farming, then villages, then crops. But this site suggests something more surprising. Early humans may have come together not to grow food, but to worship. Schmidt found no signs of homes, hearths, or permanent settlement, just stuff used for rituals and gatherings. This has led researchers to believe that spirituality and communal rituals came first and that farming followed. Because to build something this massive, you'd need hundreds of people working together, which in turn would have sparked the need for food, organization, and social structure. In other words, the temple came first, then the village, then the farm. Now, Göbekli Tepe isn't just stirring debate because it's old. It's because it seems too advanced for its time, and that's where the more controversial theories start to emerge. Some researchers believe the builders of Göbekli Tepe weren't simply primitive hunter-gatherers experimenting with stone tools. They may have been the inheritors of ancient knowledge, remnants of a much older civilization that existed before the end of the last ice age. This idea ties into the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, a theory that a comet struck Earth around 10,850 years ago, triggering a sudden and catastrophic climate shift. According to this view, the survivors of that event passed down their knowledge through symbolism, architecture, and oral tradition. And Göbekli Tepe could be one of the earliest attempts to preserve that memory. Now, if that's true, then the carvings at this site, especially the animal symbols on the pillars, aren't just decorative. They could be astronomical codes, tracking constellations and celestial events. But one pillar might hold the biggest secret of all. It's called the Vulture Stone, and it's freaking archaeologists out. On it, you'll find a strange combination of figures: a headless man, birds, and a scorpion. To the untrained eye, it might seem random, but some researchers believe these are ancient representations of constellations, like Scorpius among them, and that the headless man symbolizes a mass extinction event. Some even argue that this is the oldest known record of a comet impact, the one that triggered the Younger Dryas. And if you're wondering who this older lost civilization might have been, they are called Atlantis, or more neutrally, Civilization X. Theorists like Graham Hancock suggest that this advanced culture, destroyed in the chaos of the comet impact, passed fragments of its knowledge to survivors around the globe. In that case, Göbekli Tepe wasn't the start of civilization, it was the restart. Now, back to the stones. Pillar 43 may look like a celestial calendar at first, but when archaeologists recreated the sky patterns encoded in its carvings, they found a precise snapshot of the sky dating back over 13,000 years. It appears to show a meteor shower, a flood, and humanity's tragic end, aka the Headless Man. A snake rising from the ground might even symbolize tidal waves or destruction coming from below. But the story doesn't end there. Pillar seems to expand on the same disaster, the one they called the Terror of the Sky. You might see animals fleeing, waves, fire raining down. It paints a vivid picture of the meteor shower. But wait! While Pillars 43 and 56 may encode memories of a past catastrophe, Pillar 18 might be a forecast. That stone zooms in on the Aquarius constellation. If this sounds familiar, maybe it's from the phase Age of Aquarius, which is the age we're living in now. Some enthusiasts believe this may be a warning for us, and may be telling us that a similar meteor shower will hit Earth and thus you and me and us. I mean, chills! But hey, that's the kind of mystery that makes Göbekli Tepe so captivating. Today, archaeologists know that Göbekli Tepe was part of a much larger sacred complex, now known as Taş Tepeler, a network of ancient sites across the region, each with its own secrets and structures, but connected by shared patterns and motifs. In 2019, excavations began at this sister site, just 40 miles from Göbekli Tepe, known as Karahan Tepe. And here's the twist. Some researchers believe Karahan Tepe might be even older. Unlike Göbekli Tepe, which appears to have been primarily ceremonial, Karahan Tepe has signs of domestic structures like walls, tools, and perhaps even homes. And that changes everything. Because whether these sites were the work of highly sophisticated hunter-gatherers or survivors carrying the fragments of a lost pre-Ice Age civilization, one thing becomes clear. Our ancestors weren't just surviving. They were planning, tracking, and predicting. They were far more capable, curious, and connected to the universe than we ever gave them credit for.
There are several places on Earth, awesome and mysterious, that evoke so many questions that some people believe they were built by or with the help of extraterrestrial intelligence. Let's explore those mystical destinations. In the hills above Cusco, Peru, you'll find an ancient Inca fortress called Sacsayhuaman. Some of the massive stones of its walls weigh as much as 360 tons. They're cut and fitted together surprisingly precisely, and no mortar is used. The stones used for this construction were transported over 20 miles from quarries. But how did the Inca do it? Did they ask for extraterrestrial help? Perhaps. But archaeologists disagree. They have found evidence that the Inca used advanced engineering techniques involving ropes and levers to move and fit the stones. Okay, let's move on to the Nazca lines. You can see them in the deserts of southern Peru. In this area, more than 800 lines and 300 shapes stretch across the deserted landscape. Those are called geoglyphs and are best viewed from the sky. That's how theories about alien involvement popped up. The lines were made by removing the top layer of reddish rocks to reveal the lighter ground beneath. And this is a pretty simple technique. You don't even need to use modern tools. The purpose of the Nazca lines is still a mystery, but most experts believe that they had some ceremonial significance. Now, the stone circle of Stonehenge must have something to do with extraterrestrial visitors, right? Those stones, some weighing as much as 50 tons, were brought from quarries hundreds of miles away. No wonder many people offered theories about alien intervention. Well, sorry to disappoint you, but archaeologists have proven that the monument could have actually been built with the help of technologies available around 5,000 years ago, such as wooden sleds and rollers. The exact purpose of Stonehenge is still under debate. Its builders could have used the stone circle to track the sun or to perform astronomy-related rituals. The next breath-stopping place on our list is the Egyptian pyramids, namely the pyramids of Giza just outside Cairo. They were built over 4,500 years ago. The largest of them, the Great Pyramid, is made of millions of 2-ton stones which are arranged with super precision. The pyramids also align with the stars of Orion's belt, and this makes some people believe that aliens might have helped to build these awe-inspiring constructions. Experts disagree. They say that although the exact methods the Egyptian builders used are still unclear, the pyramids are undoubtedly a human achievement. Ramps, levers, and a large workforce were likely used to move the stones into place. Then, how about Teotihuacan, located near modern-day Mexico City? Once, it was a thriving metropolis. The city was built more than 2,000 years ago, and its size and advanced architecture make people wonder if aliens played a key role in its construction. In reality, the city was created by several cultures, including the Maya and Zapotec. It was a center for trade, agriculture, and other activities, but it does have some connection to space. Its layout, with the pyramids aligned to celestial events, shows a deep understanding of astronomy. And still, it was the work of human hands. Now, let's travel to one of the most mysterious islands in the world, Easter Island. Nearly 900 stone figures known as moai stand there, some towering over 30 feet tall. These statues were carved from volcanic rock more than 1,000 years ago and moved across the island to their final resting places. This impressive feat, as well as the slightly creepy appearance of the figures, makes you think about some alien intervention, doesn't it? Well, another disappointment. It's believed that the Rapa Nui people used wooden sleds or rolling logs to transport the statues, and there's no evidence that extraterrestrials were involved. The last destination isn't even on Earth. In 1976, NASA's Viking 1 orbiter captured an image of what seemed to be a face on Mars. It sparked numerous theories about alien activity. The face seems to be staring up from the Martian surface, like evidence of the activity of an ancient alien civilization. But more detailed images from 2001, taken by the Mars Global Surveyor, revealed that the so-called face was just a natural mesa, an isolated flat-topped hill with steep sides.
Now, history isn't just carved in stone, but these drawings on 11,000-year-old rocks might be warning us about a freaky future. Both the Mayans and the people at Göbekli Tepe made big predictions about humanity's future. What's eerie is that despite being hundreds of miles and years apart, they used similar symbols. Now, let's get one thing straight. Ancient civilizations often depicted their deities as humanoids. You'll find humanoid representations of celestial beings in ancient Egypt, but also in pre-Columbian societies from the Americas. For example, Aztecs had an important deity they called Quetzalcoatl. He was related to the wind, Venus, and the sun. In some ancient Aztec art, he's depicted carrying a tiny handbag. The shocker is that a very similar winged figure was represented by the Assyrians. Now, it's already odd that they chose similar forms to represent their gods, even though these civilizations didn't have any contact with each other. But to draw an almost identical handbag? That seems like a bit of a stretch. Of course, now, when we say handbags, we mean carvings depicting things that look like modern handbags. Not quite Coach or Prada, but you get the idea. Some theories suggest this mysterious handbag could be related to time travel. We've seen that Göbekli Tepe tells of a great flood that destroyed an ancient civilization. But during that civilization's time, they raised cattle and grew food. They knew how to handle seeds and grow crops. According to one theory, this stylish accessory could have been used for carrying seeds. Since Göbekli Tepe is believed to be near where Noah's Ark might have been found, the people of the area could have gathered seeds to plant in the New World after the Great Flood. Strange? Definitely. But so is everything we've been talking about, so let's roll with it. Another theory on the meaning of the handbag has a much more straightforward approach. In multiple ancient cultures, the circle was used to represent spirituality and non-materiality, but the square was often associated with concepts of the earth and materiality. So, what we modern humans understand as a handbag might be an image that symbolizes the reunification of the earth and sky, of the material and non-material elements of existence. Not a bad theory, I would say, but then who am I? Some researchers, like Graham Hancock, are not convinced with these previous explanations. For him, Göbekli Tepe is all about little gray people and their contacts with ancient earthling civilizations. You see, right in the middle of this ancient site, there's a special pillar called Pillar 43, or Enclosure D. At first glance, it looks like an astronomical calendar. You see the scorpion? That's the Scorpion constellation. And that ball in the center? It's all about the sun's alignment. We know ancient societies like the Maya or Incas were stellar astronomers. So what's the big deal here? Turns out the folks at Göbekli Tepe were talking about a massive natural disaster that wiped out all forms of life before their time. When astronomers recreated the angles and positions from Pillar 43, it showed an astrological setup from over 13,000 years ago. The stone also depicted a tragic event, a mix of a flood and a meteor shower. The headless man? That's humanity's tragic end. And the snake from the ground? Giant waves washing over the earth. And it's not just one stone telling the tale. Pillar 56 shows more of the Younger Dryas event, or as it's called, the terror from the sky. You see animals fleeing and waves crashing as the meteor shower hits. But wait, while Pillar 43 gives us the exact date of the last disaster, Pillar 18 in Enclosure D gives us the date of the next possible wipeout. The art depicted in this pillar zooms in on the constellation of Aquarius. Now, you might have seen the movie The Age of Aquarius or heard some woo-woo theories about how we're entering this phase right now. You see what I'm driving at? Göbekli Tepe might be giving us the date of the next disaster so that we have time to prep for it. These images could be a survival guide for humanity. Or not. Now, this would be bananas if it weren't for one piece of evidence. Let's check the facts. The Encke comet, discovered in 1786, used to be part of a megacomet, 100 miles wide, made of ice, metal, and rock. It broke up and formed a debris field. Now, instead of one huge comet, we've got millions of smaller ones. When the Earth passed through that debris, the folks at Göbekli Tepe saw a firestorm of comets, all coming from the Aquarius constellation, just like on Pillar 43. Now here's the supposed scary part. We pass through that same debris field every year. If you're watching this in September, October, or November, we're flying through it right now. It could happen that these debris fall onto the surface of the Earth all over again, repeating history. But so far, that's just a theory. The mind-boggling question is, how did the people at Göbekli Tepe know about an event that happened before they were all born? In 2019, excavations kicked off at Karahan Tepe, about 40 miles from Göbekli Tepe. But research suggests it might have been settled even earlier. Göbekli Tepe seems to have been a place of worship or an observatory, but Karahan Tepe shows signs of a structured society. Excavations at Karahan Tepe reveal artifacts like intricate carvings, tools, and even possible remnants of buildings. This suggests that these people were not just hunters and gatherers, but had a structured society with spiritual or ceremonial practices. In 2020, researchers started unearthing several other settlements in the area, indicating that Göbekli Tepe was part of a huge metropolis. The whole site is known collectively as Taş Tepeler. The thing is, the math around all this has scientists baffled. Around that time, Earth was just leaving its last ice age, and scientists used to think Stone Age civilizations were primitive. But evidence keeps showing up, proving that wasn't the case. For Göbekli Tepe to have existed with that level of tech 12,000 years ago, there must have been an even earlier civilization. That kind of tech doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. And hey, we've got plenty of other proof of advanced societies. Take the Mayans, for example. Recent discoveries have shown they were even more advanced than we previously thought. They built massive cities with roads up to 130 feet wide, painted white to guide travelers at night, a feat you'd expect in places like Portugal or England. These roads, sometimes elevated over swampy ground, formed a network of over 964 settlements, like a giant spider web. A bunch of scientists turned their eyes on this theory, but it could be the connecting point of everything we've been speculating about in this video. After all, the people from the sky could have come down and told the people from Göbekli Tepe about the destruction of a more ancient civilization than theirs. Or not. Remember, don't give up your critical thinking just because you see something on the internet. Anyway, Göbekli Tepe raises suspicions just as Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Egypt. When we mix little green aliens into the equation, it explains one way that surreal engineering feats were possible in these sites. But it also underestimates our human ancestors and their thinking abilities. One of the main characteristics of Göbekli Tepe's architecture are the T-shaped pillars. The heaviest of them weigh 20 tons and are around 20 feet. These pillars were erected perfectly, without so much as a dent in them. Sure, that's pretty hard to do without modern machines. But hey, maybe they figured it out and built it after much effort. Now, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, this old pal is supposed to have cracked the secret of the pyramid builders in modern-day America. He used it to build his own castle and other mesmerizing structures. So, hey, I guess we'll have to keep digging to find out the actual facts about it all, huh?
We all grew up believing that Stonehenge is the world's most ancient observatory, but now it has some serious competition for the title. Nabta Playa was built more than 2,000 miles away in southern Egypt and thousands of years before Stonehenge and even the pyramids of Giza. In 1973, a Bedouin guide stumbled upon a strange group of huge stone formations while crossing the Sahara Desert. He led American archaeologist Fred Wendorf to the site, located about 60 miles from the Nile. Wendorf's friend and colleague claims the team found the stones while stopping for a bathroom break in the desert. Either way, what they found changed history. At first, Wendorf thought the stone structures were just natural formations. But then it hit him. This area was once a lake, meaning no natural rocks should even be there. He kept coming back to the site for decades, and by the early 1990s, his team finally uncovered a circle of stones that seemed to line up with the stars in a way no one could explain. After 7 long years of trying to crack the mystery of the site, Wendorf reached out to an expert in archaeoastronomy. They study how ancient people used the stars. One evening, while the expert sat in the cool desert sand staring at the stones, he realized that they formed a pattern radiating outward from a massive burial mound. One by one, as they dug into the sediment, the buried megaliths started lining up like spokes on a wheel. The team had already used radiocarbon dating to test samples from fire hearths and tamarisk wood roofing found inside the stone circle. Nabta Playa had dozens of standing stones, all a few feet tall. Some of them lined up exactly with the sunrise on special days, and others matched up with bright stars in the sky. Inside the big circle, there were 6 special stones that may have been used for rituals or marking important times of the year. Around them, 29 standing stones might have worked like a simple calendar to help people know when it was time for something important, like the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. When the sun rose in just the right spot, it was a sign that the rainy season was coming. The stone circle once aligned with the brightest stars in the northern sky: Arcturus, Sirius, and Alpha Centauri. Some stones even pointed to the constellation Orion. By tracing Arcturus's movement across the sky, they figured out that it matched perfectly with the circle around 4800 BCE. That means it was the oldest astronomical site ever discovered. And the people of Nabta Playa may have been watching the stars thousands of years before telescopes were even invented. It looks like it had a huge meaning for people living and traveling through the desert. Over 10,000 years ago, the long, cold, and dry ice age that lasted for tens of thousands of years was finally fading away. Northern Africa got massive monsoons and rains that filled up seasonal lakes. So, parts of the desert turned into short-lived oases. For the nomadic people who roamed this harsh land, these summer rains were everything. Their entire way of life revolved around cattle. When archaeologists opened the central tomb at Nabta Playa, they dug up cattle bones and even a massive rock carved into the shape of a cow. The people who built it used the stars to guide them and find hidden watering holes like Nabta Playa, which likely held water for about 4 months a year, starting with the summer monsoons. But there was no North Star back then, so instead they navigated using bright stars and the way the sky seemed to spin in circles above them. When the lakes were full, the standing stones would be partly submerged, and from the western shore, you would see the reflection of the stars on the dark water. Nabta Playa is way less famous than Stonehenge, perhaps because its stones were buried and the famous site in England was open to visitors for thousands of years. Sadly, when Nabta Playa did become famous, some tourists ruined parts of it by moving stones around, which messed up the ancient star alignments. To protect it, the authorities moved everything to a museum where people can see the stones and the carved cow statue without damaging them. The Egyptian Observatory isn't the only construction similar to Stonehenge. It has versions that were used for different purposes from Germany and France to the US and the Andes in northern Peru. This last one is actually one of the oldest big structures ever built in this region. The circular plaza is made of 2 giant stone walls arranged in a ring. It was likely used for ceremonies and gatherings. Scientists have carbon dated it to be about 4,750 years old, which means it was built before the Great Pyramids of Egypt and Stonehenge. The plaza had 2 entrances and a special layer of clay, soil, gravel, and charcoal underneath. It was carefully planned and built. Archaeologists also found ceramic pieces, quartz crystals, and gemstones at the site, so it was definitely a special place. People visited it for centuries, but at some point it was sealed off, probably because of changing beliefs and traditions. The most recent discovery was the remains of a large timber circle roughly the same age and with parallels to Stonehenge, all the way up in Denmark. This open-air structure was likely part of a special area where prehistoric people from the late Neolithic and early Bronze Age gathered for rituals and ceremonies. The circle was made up of 45 giant wooden posts, forming a huge ring about 100 feet wide. The wood is gone now, but scientists believe tall timbers once stood in the holes and created an impressive wood henge. No one knows exactly what these circles were used for, but archaeologists have found animal bones and food remains at similar sites. So people probably used to gather there for feasts and rituals. In 2024, scientists found 2 ancient stone circles from the Neolithic period in Dartmoor National Park in England. Some archaeologists believe they might form a sacred ark. Many of Dartmoor's stone structures were built in a curved shape on the high ground in the center of the area. A long time ago, Dartmoor was covered in forests, so people may have used the high ground as important markers. One of the newly found circles fits inside this ark, but the other one is outside of it, to the north. This could have been an entrance point into the ark. There's also a raised bank of earth near the stones, which looks similar to other famous Neolithic sites, like the Ring of Brodgar in Scotland and Stonehenge itself. This means the people who built these circles may have visited Stonehenge or been inspired by it. Archaeologists in Oman found ancient stone monuments called tralith, which got the nickname Arabian Stonehenge. They were finished about 2,000 years ago, but no one knows for sure who built them or why. Scientists also found stone hand axes that are incredibly old, between 300,000 and 1.3 million years old, from the time when the first humans left Africa. At another site in central Oman, archaeologists discovered a Neolithic tomb from around 5,000 to 4,600 BCE. There are 2 chambers with the bones of dozens of people inside beneath a giant megalithic structure. Nearby, they also discovered rock carvings that were made by people who lived in the area. And then there is another Stonehenge look-alike, this time in Saudi Arabia, that was used as an apartment complex thousands of years ago. Archaeologists discovered a total of 345 stone circles by looking at aerial photos of a lava field. Each circle is between 13 to 26 feet and has at least one large standing stone in the middle. These structures still have remains of stone walls and doorways. Stone circles like Stonehenge are often linked to ceremonies and rituals, but scientists say that many early houses were actually built in round shapes, and rectangular homes only became common much later in history. There's something absolutely massive and deeply unsettling hiding right next to Stonehenge. More than a dozen giant pits carved into the ground. They're all spaced with eerie precision and form a perfect circle, more than a mile wide. For years, nobody could explain them. They were too big to be animal traps, too organized to be natural sinkholes, and way too deliberate to be random. And the biggest question was, who had the power, knowledge, and reason to reshape the land on this scale 4,000 years ago? So these pits surround a place called Durrington Walls, a huge Neolithic settlement just a short walk from Stonehenge. Archaeologists now say humans dug them around 2500 BCE, during the late Neolithic period, when people supposedly lived simple farming lives without metal tools, written language, or modern math. Each pit stretches about 30 feet across and plunges roughly 15 feet down, and together they form an almost flawless ring. To prove the pits weren't natural, scientists went full detective mode. They drilled soil cores and tested the dirt itself, including microscopic traces of ancient DNA and something called luminescence dating, which tells you when the soil last saw sunlight. Every test pointed to the same answer. Humans made these pits on purpose. Here's where it gets wild. The pits weren't dug randomly as people moved along. They were laid out as a single unified project. That means Neolithic builders had to visualize a massive circle, measure distances across open land, and coordinate teams over a huge area without any GPS, drones, or even aerial maps. All they had were people, ropes, wooden tools, and shared knowledge. So why would they invest so much effort and do this? Archaeologists think the pits formed part of a ritual landscape, not a practical one. Durrington Walls already looks like a place where people gathered for ceremonies, feasts, and seasonal events. The pit circle may have marked a sacred boundary. It could have separated ordinary land from a spiritually charged space. Some researchers think the pits symbolized a border between the world of the living and the underworld. The scale of the structure is pretty impressive. It may be one of the largest prehistoric monuments ever built in Britain, even bigger than Stonehenge itself when you look at the total area. And unlike Stonehenge's towering rocks, this monument stayed invisible for thousands of years, quietly hiding under the grass. Generations walked over it without knowing they were standing inside a gigantic ancient design. For a long time, we underestimated ancient people. We imagined them reacting to nature instead of shaping it. But discoveries like this keep proving that wrong. The builders of Durrington Walls didn't just live in the landscape, but engineered it. They thought in terms of geometry, symbolism, and long-term meaning. And this isn't the only case. All over the world, thanks to new technology, scientists keep finding proof that ancient humans worked on massive scales with shocking precision. In the Amazon rainforest, researchers found traces of 2,500-year-old cities hiding beneath the jungle canopy. Scientists spent more than 20 years exploring the area on foot before technology finally cracked the case. The Lidar technology, which is like X-ray vision that surveys a landscape using lasers to digitally peel away the jungle, scanned a massive area of over 100 square miles. It helped us spot more than 6,000 rectangular earthen platforms, which are likely used as homes or public buildings. They also found agricultural terraces, drainage systems, and carefully shaped farmland. This wasn't a random settlement. It was well planned. At least 15 distinct settlements appeared, all connected by wide, straight roads that cut cleanly through the landscape. These roads didn't follow rivers or slopes as you'd expect. They crossed each other at perfect right angles, forming a grid. The researchers believe people from the Quillamope and Upanu cultures lived there between about 500 BCE and 300 to 600 CE. They farmed corn and sweet potatoes, reshaped the land, and built a system that lasted for centuries. Discoveries like this prove something huge. Far more people lived in the Amazon than scientists ever thought. Tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands. And they didn't just survive there, they engineered the landscape. Just like at Durrington Walls, the real story hid in plain sight until technology caught up. Then there's Peru, with one of archaeology's biggest headaches, the Nazca Lines. These gigantic designs of animals, plants, and geometric shapes stretch across the earth like an ancient message, so huge that only birds or satellites can see them properly. For decades, people have tried to figure out why the Nazca people made them, how they did it, and what those massive patterns mean. And until recently, the mystery stayed stubbornly unsolved. Walking the desert or flying over it, archaeologists would spot lines and figures and wonder if anything was missing. But the ones already known were just the tip of the iceberg. Traditional fieldwork, with people on the ground slowly mapping things out by hand, took forever. And even then, dozens of smaller designs were just too faint for the unassisted eye. So, instead of scanning the desert on foot, researchers taught artificial intelligence how to see patterns in aerial and drone imagery. They fed terabytes of pictures into trained models, and AI began flagging shapes, curves, and ancient outlines that had been hiding for centuries. In just about 6 months, it identified 303 previously unknown geoglyphs in the Nazca Desert. It almost doubled the number of figures we knew before and showed entire classes of designs. Some of these new shapes are tiny, just a few feet across, but they sit next to giant ones like the hummingbird or monkey. Thanks to all the new finds, scientists can finally start testing theories they had about the purpose of the lines. It looks like the lines weren't just decorations. Many may have been walkways or routes used for ceremonial movement. In case you're worried, AI isn't replacing archaeologists. They still check every promising lead on the ground and interpret everything the machines find. Back in Britain, the pit circle also connects to an even older structure, an early Neolithic site called Robin Hood's Ball. Because it stood so far from the famous stones, it felt like a side character. But it turns out Robin Hood's Ball is from around 3600 BCE. Which makes it about 500 years older than Stonehenge itself. It's what archaeologists call a causewayed enclosure, which sounds fancy but really means a big circular earthwork made of ditches and banks. Instead of one clean trench, the ditches are broken into short segments with little gaps in between. And instead of keeping people out, it probably brought them together. Archaeologists think these enclosures worked as gathering places, spots for meetings, feasts, rituals, and social bonding among the first farming communities. Then came the twist no one expected. While preparing land at Lark Hill, a hillside northeast of Stonehenge, for new military housing, archaeologists found signs of another causewayed enclosure. This discovery flipped the map upside down. The landscape wasn't growing outward from Stonehenge, it was already alive long before the stones ever went up. As researchers dug deeper, they found hundreds of flint tools, beautifully made leaf-shaped arrowheads, chunks of human skull, and pieces of antler, likely used as digging tools. Then came the pottery. Different styles showed up in different places, some from the enclosure ditches, others from nearby pits. That matters because pottery styles often act like cultural fingerprints. The mix suggests something big. Different groups of people were visiting the same place and brought their own traditions, tools, and objects with them. All of this changes how we see Stonehenge. The stones didn't appear out of nowhere. They rose in a landscape already loaded with meaning, memory, and movement. Every new discovery like the ones near Stonehenge, in the Amazon jungle and Peru, forces archaeologists to rewrite textbooks and the whole world to rethink the idea of progress. It turns out that ancient people made up for the absence of steel and electricity with observation, creativity, and shared meaning. This could totally be one of those went looking for copper, found gold stories, except in this case, the farmers in China were actually digging for bat droppings. Yikes! And ended up finding a piece of human skull instead of gold. Huh? Why would people be looking for dung? And more importantly, why is that skull so precious? Almost like gold. Let me break it down for you. First things first, the farmers were just looking for natural fertilizer. That's why they were rummaging in that cave. But instead of bat droppings, they hit a piece of a human skull, ancient, heavy, and fossilized. Scientists named it Maba 1 and dated it back to 300,000 years ago. Back then, many different types of ancient humans were roaming the earth, so no one could figure out who this skull belonged to. For decades, experts were guessing. Could it be Neanderthal or Homo erectus? Or maybe a totally new species? The skull was just a fragment, no jaw, no body, making it a real puzzle. But now, thanks to high-tech micro-CT scans, researchers have finally looked inside without damaging the fossil. What they found changes everything. Rare, tube-like structures in the skull that almost no Neanderthals had. Could this be evidence of a mysterious ancient human we never knew existed? The shape of the inside of the skull looked more like Homo erectus, a much older human species. But it didn't fully match with this one either. The skull's size and shape were more like modern humans and Neanderthals, and it had features that Homo erectus usually didn't have. For example, a shorter forehead area and a thicker bregma. That's the spot where two skull bones meet. Maba 1 also had a strange dent on the forehead, like a bruise frozen in time. This injury likely happened while the person was alive. Maybe they fell or had some condition like anemia, or even a tumor. But the person didn't get an infection from it, so it's possible they healed and lived for a while after whatever happened to them. So Maba 1 doesn't match any species we know perfectly, but it has common traits and a very similar story to other mysterious fossils from all over Africa. For example, back in 1976, one famous paleontologist and her team found another human-like skull in Tanzania. The skull the scientists found had features that resemble those of Homo sapiens, or modern humans, even though it was incredibly old. Scientists believe it could be one of the earliest examples of our species ever discovered, a real treasure. That means this skull might help answer one of the biggest questions in science. When exactly Homo sapiens first appeared? The layer of Earth where the skull was found dates back to the late Pleistocene period. That's way before most textbooks used to say modern humans existed. Since its discovery, scientists have analyzed the LH18 skull in every detail and compared it to other ancient fossils to figure out where it fits on the human family tree. They found no exact match for it, but they noticed it was related to other archaic Homo sapiens crania from Africa. On the other side of the African continent, in the rocky hills of Morocco, miners digging for barite, found bones from some ancient humans and later some stone tools and even animal remains. At first, researchers thought these bones were from Neanderthals and only about 40,000 years old. But as they dug deeper, literally, into research, they saw the fossils were actually Homo sapiens and much older, maybe around 160,000 years old. But something didn't add up as the bones looked more primitive than other known Homo sapiens fossils. Thanks to new discoveries and better dating methods from the 21st century, scientists figured out that this Moroccan site might be even more important and older than anyone could imagine. The bones had old and new traits. The face, jaw, and teeth looked a lot more like modern humans, but the shape of the skull was longer and less rounded, kind of like older human species. So, this fossil could show what early Homo sapiens brains looked like before they evolved into the brains we have today. This group of people could represent the earliest stage of our species. They were almost like us, just not quite there yet. Some scientists don't agree and think that these fossils might not be true Homo sapiens, but rather close relatives, probably Homo antecessor. That species could be a shared ancestor of both Neanderthals and humans. One thing is clear: early Homo sapiens didn't just come from one place, but from all over Africa. And some of them, now it's even trickier to say who exactly created the tools and cultural objects during the Middle Stone Age. And then, there is another mysterious unidentified find: the skull from Zambia's Broken Hill ore mine. Miners found it, and some other bones, also by accident. Scientists nicknamed it Rhodesian Man. At first, they thought it was like a missing evolutionary link between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. Now, thanks to new research tools, they found it's almost 299,000 years old, and its owner probably lived alongside the primitive species Homo naledi in southern Africa. All this fits in well with new research that says some parts of our DNA are way older than expected, even older than the time when our human ancestors split into different populations. For a while, some experts thought the best explanation was that early humans in Africa interbred with a mystery species, like how humans mixed with Neanderthals and Denisovans in Europe and Asia. But we've never found fossils or DNA from this supposed ghost species. So, instead of saying that unseen species passed us these ancient genes, scientists used advanced models to study how human DNA changes over time. And it's possible that the earliest Homo sapiens populations in Africa weren't one big happy family after all. Between 1 million and 100,000 years ago, Earth went through intense glacial cycles, freezing periods followed by warmer ones. These shifts forced human groups to spread out when land was good and then pushed them back together when conditions got rough. Advanced analysis of the genomes of living people from all over the world, Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Americas, showed that two separate human population groups reunited about 300,000 years ago. One of them, which had gone through a rough time and nearly vanished at one point, made up around 80% of the genes in modern humans. The other group added the remaining 20%, and that 20% may have made a huge difference, especially in areas like brain function and how our neurons work. Unlike Neanderthals, whose DNA make up only about 1 to 4% of the genome of non-Africans today, this ancient mixing event added 10 times that amount, and it's in everyone. Scientists still need to figure out who these mystery ancestors were. From fossil evidence, it looks like Homo erectus and Homo heidelbergensis, who lived in Africa and beyond during that time, might match these ancient populations. But researchers will need more clues, both genetic and fossilized, to be sure. Some of them think that the features of one group may come from an even older ancestor species, like Homo antecessor, whose fossils were found in Spain. Maybe the answer is hiding in the Khoisan people in southern Africa, who have more genetic diversity than all other humans combined. That's because they've had a long and isolated history, and their ancestors go way back to those ancient branches of early Homo sapiens. About 15% of their DNA comes from Europeans, and they also carry East African ancestry from about 2,000 years ago. Now, scientists think that descendants of both West and East Africans eventually left Africa and populated the rest of the world. Looks like these people were the product of multiple branches of Homo sapiens coming back together. It's clear from this research that we aren't a species with one clean origin. Perhaps it's time we stop talking about African ancestry as one thing. Africa is hugely diverse, and so are the roots of humanity.
Archaeologists in Panama kept finding chiefs covered in gold under a plain sunburned field. Weird enough, then they found chief regalia so small it could only belong to a child. That discovery shifted the interpretation of the site. El Caño was no longer just a rich ceremonial site. It looked more like a place where power could pass from one generation to the next. And now, a newly opened chamber there has expanded that picture. El Caño stands apart from the usual ancient gold story. The newest chamber, dated to around AD 800 to 1000, didn't just produce shiny artifacts. It added another piece to a much larger pattern. Archaeologists found pottery, gold ornaments, and a central high-status person marked out by where the gold was placed. This was not random wealth in the dirt. It was a public statement about rank. The objects themselves are vivid. 2 bracelets, 2 earrings, pectoral ornaments decorated with bats and crocodiles. Those are not the kind of items someone tosses in casually. They were chosen to say something. In a world with no billboards, no spotlights, and no giant stone inscriptions, gold did the talking. It told everyone exactly who mattered most in that chamber. The location makes this even more striking. Not Egypt, not Peru, not some famous archaeological landscape packed with giant ruins, central Panama. Historically, this region was often treated as the place between the main acts of the ancient Americas, wedged between the Maya to the north and the great Andean cultures to the south. El Caño repeatedly challenges that older view. That old assumption existed for a reason. This part of Panama does not hit you like a stone-built empire. There's no skyline of huge temples, no carved dynastic walls, no dramatic ruins screaming a powerful society was here. In tropical Central America, a lot of everyday life was built in materials that don't age gracefully. Wood, thatch, fibers, skin, feathers. Most of it simply doesn't stick around for 1,000 years. So when gold survives, it becomes one of the loudest voices left. And El Caño did not give up that voice quickly. Julia Mayo's team began geophysical surveys there in 2005. By 2010, they had dug a pit about 16 feet deep and uncovered a chief covered in gold. Then the site kept escalating. More ornaments appeared. More chambers turned up. More evidence started linking this field to a whole ceremonial landscape. This was not a lucky weekend dig. It was years of slow, patient work, turning a quiet pasture into one of the biggest archaeological stories in Panama. The contrast is striking from the surface. El Caño looks ordinary, the kind of place where you'd expect grass, cattle, and heat, not dynasties. But under that ordinary ground, archaeologists found symbols of authority designed to be seen from a distance. Polished gold would have caught the harsh sunlight. Chest ornaments likely flashed when a leader moved. Animal imagery, bats, crocodiles, and other powerful creatures turned jewelry into a visual language of authority. This was status you could spot instantly, and the newest chamber matters because it is not standing alone. Mayo said the site has produced 9 similar chambers and that this was a place where elite individuals were laid to rest for about 200 years. This finding expands the interpretation of the site. One rich chamber is interesting. A ceremonial resting ground used by powerful people across multiple generations suggests something else entirely. It begins to resemble a long-running system. You can see that system even more clearly in another major El Caño find from 2024. Archaeologists uncovered the shared chamber of an important Khoekhoe lord buried around 750 to 800 CE. Inside were gold ornaments, ceramic objects, bells, skirts, and a set of flutes. The team dubbed him the Lord of the Flutes, which sounds almost legendary until you remember this is not a myth. It's a real person from a real ceremonial tradition found in the same site. The scale grows even larger around that burial. Researchers found many other individuals placed in the same setting. Reports said the total could reach more than 30 people. At that point, you are no longer looking at one important person with a collection of objects. You are looking at an event, a choreographed display, a message to everyone watching that this leader stood at the center of a much bigger social order. This interpretation is supported by research. A 2020 study of El Caño's multiple chambers found the same basic pattern again and again. One highest status individual in each other, people arranged around that central figure, and a strong sense that the whole composition represented social order. The authors also concluded that some of these final ceremonies involved very harsh ritual practices. The layout itself was part of the performance of power. Now go back to the child-sized regalia, because that might be the strangest clue of all. One of Mayo's earlier breakthroughs came when she realized a set of tiny gold objects was too small for an adult. They appear to have belonged to a baby adorned like a chief. Later, the team found gold arm cuffs on the skeleton of a 12-year-old boy. Both finds point in the same direction. Status here may not have been something a person earned late in life. It may have started at birth. That implication is significant. If rank passed from father to son, then El Caño was not showing us a few isolated leaders. It was revealing a hereditary power system. That means established families, succession, and rules strong enough for an entire community to recognize them. Gold-working specialists had to exist, ceremonial knowledge had to be preserved, labor had to be organized. These were not loose little villages improvising everything as they went. This was structure. It also explains why El Caño feels bigger than a treasure story. Gold draws attention first. The real subject is political sophistication. The objects are only useful because of what they reveal: hierarchy, ceremony, inherited authority, and a leadership class that could stage power in a way everyone understood. Gold is what catches your eye first. The social system is what keeps the site interesting once the shine wears off. There is another reason El Caño matters so much. Less than 2 miles away sits Sitio Conte, the older Panamanian site that had long provided the main evidence for this gold-rich tradition. For years, Sitio Conte was the big reference point. Then El Caño started turning up its own chiefs, its own ornaments, its own ceremonial patterns. Suddenly, this was not one isolated hotspot. It was a broader cultural world, hiding in plain sight across the same landscape. Once you imagine that world, El Caño becomes incredibly visual. No giant stone monuments. Fine, the ceremony can still feel huge. Flutes playing, bells moving, gold breastplates flashing, beads sewn into clothing, animal symbols broadcasting lineage and rank. One early chief found at El Caño wore gold breastplates, arm cuffs, a bracelet of bells, a belt of hollow gold beads, and more than 2,000 tiny gold spheres arranged as if sewn onto a sash. That is not subtle fashion. That is ceremonial theater. Imagine one of these final ceremonies. A leader is placed at the center. Gold catches the light. Music carries across the field. Companions are arranged with strict meaning. Everyone present can read the scene without a single written word. This person held the highest place. These families mattered. This order continues even now. The point was not private grief. The point was public memory and public hierarchy. That is why El Caño changes the history of Panama in a very specific way. It does not just add one more archaeological attraction to the map, it shows that central Panama had its own powerful chiefs, its own ceremonial specialists, its own symbols of rank, and probably its own dynastic lines. This region was not just absorbing importance from bigger neighbors, it was generating its own, and the site is still making that point clearer. El Caño has already revealed multiple elite chambers across years of excavation, and each new one expands the story. So the key discovery here is not a bracelet, or an earring, or even a chamber filled with gold. It is the realization that an ordinary Panamanian field was hiding a cemetery of rulers and clues to a forgotten power system that had been there the whole time, just waiting for someone to look deeper. A perfectly carved vertical hole hidden deep in the North Caucasus Mountains drops into the earth like someone drilled straight toward the planet's core. Some people even compare the shaft to internal passages inside the Egyptian pyramids. Could there really be a connection between them? So the public learned about this mystery cave thanks to a local cave enthusiast who was hiking in the North Caucasus in 2011. The rugged slopes of the Kara Hora mountain, with glacier-carved valleys and cliffs that have stood there against all sorts of weather for thousands of years, seem to be a perfect place if you want to hide something. And that's where Shemukov found something that looked like an entrance to an underground cave. He invited a team of cavers, and together they went down the shaft. At first, they were sure it was a geological formation, but the deeper they descended, the more it looked like something carefully built by humans. There were massive stone blocks that seemed fitted together so tightly that you couldn't push a knife blade between them. Some sources also say the shaft drops almost perfectly vertical, and its walls look polished, as if giant machinery smoothed them long before modern tools existed. But in reality, this smooth appearance results from natural geological fractures. What's really weird are openings resembling ventilation channels. These passages seem designed to move air through the structure. Natural caves rarely organize airflow this cleanly. That detail alone makes researchers argue whether someone designed and built all this intentionally. And if someone did build it on purpose, it would have to be one really advanced civilization. Some people said Shemukov described his discovery in every detail in his diary. But even if it really existed, it was lost. So we'll never know what was in it. In fact, we know so little about this man, and his discovery wasn't mentioned a lot on TV or elsewhere, that some people even questioned if he existed at all. Or maybe he saw something down there he shouldn't have seen. And there's no way to double-check, as he was hit by a car and passed away just 4 years after the discovery. This tragedy fueled even more rumors, speculation, and conspiracy theories. Geologists are trying to find a more logical explanation for this shaft, of course. The Caucasus Mountains are part of a massive chain called the Alpida Belt, which stretches all the way from southeastern Europe right into Asia. The Caucasus formed as a result of a tectonic plate collision. All these massive plates are still restless and constantly pushing against each other today. So the entire region gets hit with strong earthquakes on a regular basis. Plus, water, pressure, and chemical reactions can carve vertical shafts over millions of years. Underground rivers dissolve softer rock, and harder layers remain smooth, eventually forming deep chimneys. But erosion usually creates randomness, and Kara Hora has symmetry, angles, and fitted stone features that resemble architecture more than accident. Now, getting inside the shaft is still extremely dangerous. You'd have to face sheer drops, unstable ledges, and oxygen levels that thin out deeper underground. Twisting tunnels make it super tricky to find your way, and locals warn that some of the first explorers who entered never returned. Luckily, modern teams can use ground-penetrating radar and remote sensors instead of human descent to study the shaft. With every new scan, researchers find more voids that are still unreachable. Meanwhile, Kara Hora has interesting neighbors. For example, Verovkina Cave, currently the second deepest known cave on the planet. This monster drops nearly 1.5 miles straight down, deeper than 4 Empire State Buildings stacked end to end. Explorers descend through freezing waterfalls, razor-sharp rock corridors, and vertical pits that swallow light completely. Temperatures here hover just above freezing, and underground rivers roar through darkness nobody saw until recently. If you dare reach the bottom, prepare for a journey that will last weeks of staged camps, ropes stretching thousands of feet, and absolute trust in teammates. One mistake down there means you'll be gone for good. Veryovkina constantly floods and reshapes itself year after year, so cavers have to deal with flood pulses all the time. Water cuts deeper into the limestone rock and expands chambers slowly but surely, and then, because of the volume, suddenly bursts through cave openings. But this doesn't stop scientists from going down there to measure oxygen, airflow, and mineral growth to understand how caves evolve over geologic time. And that's how explorers discover strange microbial life that somehow survives without sunlight and feeds on minerals instead of plants. These ecosystems resemble conditions scientists expect beneath icy moons like Europa or Enceladus. This means the cave could be a great training ground for future space exploration. But before we head to space, Let's check out another super interesting cave system, this time in northern Spain. There's a chamber there which scientists call Pit of Bones. Explorers have to trek into a pitch-black underground maze to squeeze through a narrow shaft that suddenly drops straight down for 42 feet. At the bottom of that geological trap, you slide down a steep stone ramp into a cramped, muddy chamber that holds the largest and oldest collection of early human fossils ever discovered. It's a biological time capsule with the remains of at least 28 ancient humans, frozen long before modern history even began. Explorers also found over 6,500 fossil fragments mixed with the remains of at least 166 Ice Age cave bears, lions, wolves, and foxes that probably fell down the shaft by accident. But the human bones are a massive mystery because they seem to have ended up down there much earlier than the animals. Who these people actually were is still a huge debate. When researchers looked closer at their skulls and jaws, they noticed strong, super early Neanderthal traits. Then things got even crazier when scientists miraculously extracted mitochondrial DNA from those ancient bones. It linked these individuals not only to early Neanderthals, but also to the Denisovans, a mysterious group of ancient humans found thousands of miles away in Siberia. It proves our ancestors were moving and mixing in ways far more complicated than anyone ever guessed. The drama doesn't stop at genetics, though. This dark cave might actually hold the world's first assassination mystery and its earliest funeral. Out of thousands of bones, archaeologists found absolutely no everyday tools or food waste, except for a single, carefully crafted quartzite hand axe they nicknamed Excalibur. Because of this, some researchers think the group intentionally lowered their deceased down the shaft with the axe as a ritual. It was probably a way to show compassion hundreds of thousands of years before we thought possible. At the same time, one of the skulls shows two identical lethal fractures that look exactly like intentional blows. To get the exact timeline for all this prehistoric drama, scientists use cutting-edge tech like electron spin resonance and uranium series dating, and finally locked down that is 430,000 years old. Now, let's jump across the world to another geological giant, Devil's Tower in Wyoming. The formation shoots nearly 900 feet above the surrounding land. Its surface has long vertical columns, and it looks like some careful hands carved them. But geologists explain the structure formed when molten rock pushed upwards underground and cooled slowly. As the rock cooled, it turned into hexagonal columns, similar to how drying mud splits into patterns, just scaled up to impossible size. Erosion later removed the softer surrounding rock and left the hardened core unprotected. Local tribes thought the tower was sacred and made up stories about giant bears clawing the stone during mythical hunts. Now, scientists agree on much of its volcanic origin, but debates continue about whether magma ever reached the surface or hardened entirely underground. Even after more than a century of study, Devil's Tower still has its mysteries. When you connect all these places, engineered shafts, endless caves, and underground ecosystem, one thing becomes clear. Earth hides entire worlds beneath our feet, and we've barely scratched the surface.